So my first kind of experience with Final Destination was back in my renting movies days. So it was a long time ago that I watched it, and I never really got into the series all that much. I knew about the like iconic log scene from the second one, and I have seen that opening scene before. But I think some of us in the horror community have franchises that maybe we're a little more into, and this was just not my franchise, so I never really watched it all the way through. So, of course, when I saw that Final Destination Bloodlines was being released this year, having started my YouTube channel, I wanted to make sure I had all of the information that I needed going into this watching experience. So I did watch all of the Final Destination movies over the course of like 2 or 3 days. And I'm going to give just like a brief star rating and just kind of a synopsis. So, definite spoilers for the first 5 movies. Um, but I won't give spoilers for the new one until the end, and I'll put up my usual little warning for that. So the first movie was released in 2000. It was directed by James Wong, not to be confused with James Wan. And it's a really solid first entry into a franchise. I think all of these movies are better because they're part of a franchise. And so it really set the stage for like, I mean, as many franchises as they can make, as many movies as they can make after that. It's just such an iconic formula. So, you have your Rube Goldberg esque deaths. The first one, I think, has a couple of good ones, but it really starts amping up like the further you get into the series. But overall, it was a 4-star watch for me. I did really enjoy it. And then we have Final Destination 2, which was released in 2003 and was directed by David R. Ellis. And this one has the probably my favorite sequence in the Final Destination movies, the classic iconic opening scene of the car crash on the highway where you get the logs on the truck. So very, very exciting, super fun. This one is probably, I rated it 4 stars as well, but it's probably my favorite of the franchise. And then we have Final Destination 3, which was released in 2006, and this one was also directed by James Wong. This one I rated a 3.5. I don't know, it wasn't quite as effective for me as the first two. I know that it tends to be very beloved. This one has Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it, and it has another classic. This is something that I've come to really look forward to in Final Destination movies is the opening scene premonition. So in the first one, obviously it's the plane crash. The second one, we have the highway crash. And the third one, this one is the amusement park ride. And so this one has some really iconic moments in it too that I think people think of when they think of the franchise, such as the tanning bed deaths, which definitely something that I've never been in a tanning bed, but I think if I were to be in one, this is what would come to mind. So, Final Destination kind of ruining everyday things for us. And then we have the Final Destination, which was released in 2009, and this one was directed by David R. Ellis. So kind of like a swapping of directors here. This one I think is, from what I've seen, one of the least regarded. People really don't like this one, and I think part of it is the 3D gimmick. Um, I didn't see this in theaters, but I clocked that it was a 3D movie as soon as it started. There's just tons of objects flying towards the screen. There's these really excessive CGI visions that the main character has. And so I think all of those things combined made it sort of a little cheesier and not in as much of a fun way as some of the other ones. I mean, they're all cheesy, but people didn't like this one. I do love the opening, of course. It's the racetrack fiasco, and there's just some really fun deaths and gore. This one also has an escalator death, which I think is something that we've all worried about, as well as a death in a car wash. Another thing I wanted to mention about Final Destination, the Final Destination, is it's been a while, but maybe you all have seen it. The episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they go to the water park and Mac is talking about essentially going to the bottom of a pool and having your guts sucked out from the drain. And I don't know if they say it in that episode that it's a reference to Final Destination, but I was watching this one, and as we got further and further into the scene, I was thinking, there's no way that that's what the death is gonna be. Um, and then it was. And so that was surprising and definitely got a chuckle out of me. So if you remember that episode of It's Always Sunny and they do mention Final Destination, let me know. And I rated the Final Destination with a 2.5. It just wasn't. the the 3D gimmick really just, it's so over the top. I'm so glad we don't do that anymore. My guess is that there wasn't anticipation of another entry into the franchise, given that the fourth one was titled The Final Destination. But here we get Final Destination 5, which was released in 2011, directed by Stephen Quayle. And so this one, again, I think this one is my least favorite opener. I didn't love the bridge scene quite as much as some of the other ones. This one, Tony Todd is back in this one. He wasn't in, I believe he was in the first two, and wasn't in any other until this one. And this one also has the 3D gimmick. It's not quite as goofy as the Final Destination. I think what really draws people to this one and has people liking it more so is the ending, the sort of twist ending, where this one ends right as the first one begins. And so I think fans of the franchise were really excited about that, and that kind of made this one a little bit more beloved than the Final Destination. And I rated this one just a solid 3. It was fine. I liked it, but it wasn't as memorable, I think, as some of the other ones. The twist ending really makes this one. So, talking about Final Destination Bloodlines, this one was just released in May of this year. It was directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein. I have not seen anything that they've done, really. They haven't been involved with a Final Destination previously. They've done a few things, but nothing that I recognize that jumped out at me. It was written by Guy Busick, who worked on Ready or Not, Abigail, and some of the Scream movies. So definitely has some iconic writing in there. This one stars Caitlin Santajuana, Tio Briones, and also co-stars Richard Harmon, who I think is the sweetheart of the movie, just based on my own experience of watching him and some of the memes that I've seen that have come from this movie. Plagued by a recurring violent nightmare, a college student returns home to find the one person who can break the cycle and save her family from the horrific fate that inevitably awaits them. So the theme that we get in all of the Final Destination movies is, of course, the inevitability of death and kind of a commentary on whether or not we can cheat our own fate or we can forestall the inevitability of death. And this one follows a theme that seems to be pretty consistent throughout 2025 horror, and that is like intergenerational trauma. This one follows a family who is interacting with this like death curse and trying to save each other from the pattern, the the timeline, I guess, that death is following. This movie was so much fun to see in theaters. It really amped up some of the intensity of the kills and the anticipation of each one. I was on the edge of my seat. I was cackling. I went to see this with a couple of friends, and we were all just so so enthralled with everything, just waiting for the next crazy thing to happen. So definitely in terms of execution, it was executed very well. It was very fun. Um, my only complaint, if it is even a complaint, just nitpicky thing, was I did get a little bit bored in between. I think they tried to explore the family dynamic a la 2025 horror, um, and it just got a little, I don't know, I had this feeling of like, like, let's get it over with, let's get to the next thing, I think they got a little bit um, maybe mixed up with trying to have this family that is dealing with this thing and have you care about them, but then the tone would shift and then it would just be like ridiculous kills again. um, and so I don't know if, I know that there has to be lulls. Of course we can't just watch 90 minutes of like insane deaths, although I'm down for that. But I just found myself being a little impatient with some of like the family dynamics and the dialogue. I was like, all right, come on, let's go. The acting was fine. Most of the actors were fine. Again, Richard Harmon, I think, was the star of the show, even though he wasn't a central. I mean, he was mostly main character, adjacent to the main characters, I guess. But everything that he said and did just brought me joy. He was so much fun to watch, and um, kind of the rest of the characters fell a little bit flat, I think, in comparison. But overall, fine performances. He just really won me over in particular, and I think in general, like fans of the franchise really enjoyed his characterization in this one. So I think what makes Final Destination as a franchise really effective is its ability to hold tension and allow for a release, right? So you have these moments building up to the eventual death where the death entity or whatever, we never really find out, is sort of teasing us, right? So things will happen in a room or in a space, and we'll think that we know what's going to happen. We'll say, like, oh, this thing is going to fall on this person and blah, 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 whatever. But then it turns around and it's not what we initially expected. So I think it's definitely kind of a joke on horror consumers, people who watch a lot of horror, right? Because we tend to think we know everything. At least I do. I think I try to predict what's going to happen. And a lot of the time with this particular franchise, what I think is going to happen is not what ends up happening, right? And it's very effective for me in that way. Um, so the tension is palpable. You can definitely feel that like building up. And then you get like kind of released with this like wild, fantastical, gory death. And it's just such a fun, it's like if a roller coaster was a movie. It's so much fun. The gore in this one was pretty high. It was gross. There were some moments, um, certain things happening to certain characters that really had me and everyone in the theater just absolutely cringing. Think about like the grossest injuries that you can, and they probably are in this movie. And because of the high budget, I think this one either had the highest budget or the second highest budget. It's happening right in your face. So uh, I would say if you are someone who's watched the other ones and didn't have a problem getting through them, then absolutely. This one is not so much worse. Um, but if you are someone who is squeamish, definitely see if you can stomach the first one and then kind of work your way up from there, because I think they do sort of gradually amp up the craziness. And for a mainstream horror release too, it was gross. It was. So I, again, just cackling, absolutely cackling in the theater. I had so much fun. So I will be giving some spoilers for Final Destination Bloodlines. If you are trying to avoid spoilers, definitely go and see it and then come back and finish this video. But I encourage, especially fans of the franchise, if you are skeptical at all, this one is, I endorse it, absolutely. It is a blast. Definitely check it out. So this one hits all of the Final Destination hallmarks. You have this big, bombastic opening scene. This one happening in a Space Needle-esque restaurant. Um, and then you have the person who has the premonition who stops it, and then ultimately starts this whole cycle. The difference with this one being that the cycle doesn't happen immediately to her and the survivors. It happens over time. Right, so it takes so long for this um, death to catch up with all of these people that survive this thing, that they were able to have children, and so those children technically should have never been born, right? So that's kind of the main difference with this one. The opening is great. You don't have the 3D gimmick, which is great. Definitely don't need that. And lots of gore, lots of over the top deaths, and definitely like a high budget scene. So then, inevitably, in a Final Destination movie, you have the person who had the premonition, and in this case, that person's granddaughter, who is trying to figure out if there's a way to avoid dying, right? To cheat the system, to figure it all out, right? And she does this by using her grandmother's journal to try to predict um, what's going to happen, right? And so she kind of develops this ability to like recognize what's going on around her and be like, oh, this thing is going to happen, right? So they're trying to predict it. And so one of these attempts at figuring out death's design brings us to a hospital morgue where the dearly departed Tony Todd is. And so you get this moment in this goofy, gory movie that is actually incredibly meaningful because Tony Todd was sick with stomach cancer at the time, and this was actually his final role. And so he delivers this monologue about death that is just so interesting with the context of everything. And I think it was, while it's tragic, I think it was beautiful that he was able to have this moment in this franchise that he's been part of for so long. So, and then at the end, the credits, they have a little line saying in memory of Tony Todd. So that is kind of interesting. It was kind of this like sweet moment in the middle of this like crazy movie. So I'm glad that they were able to do that and have that in there. And then finally, you have the twist ending, where in typical Final Destination fashion, you think that it's over and they found a way to cheat death, and the final remaining characters, are planning the rest of their life, and so on and so forth. And then they die in a horrific Rube Goldberg set of events. And this one actually had some fan service. The final two characters are killed with logs coming off of like a train derailment. And so, and then the movie ends, and it's fantastic. But there was a lot of fan service, I think, throughout the movie, especially with the logs. There were just so many scenes where, um, you know, there was at least one or two scenes where it was mentioned, but one specifically where they're trying to pull out of a driveway and a truck drives by with the logs on the back. And I don't know why that one ended up being so iconic. I mean, there's so many other deaths that are relatable throughout the series, but that one really got people. Even like there was like marketing for the movie with trucks that had like a decal on the back with the logs and stuff. So Yeah, for some reason that one really stuck in people's minds. So overall, I rated this one a 4.5. Not a perfect movie, just because it doesn't stand alone. I don't think like you need sort of like the background in order to really appreciate it because it follows this very specific um, uh, recipe. So I would highly encourage you to go see it. It's a lot of fun, especially if you're going with people who maybe are a little bit squeamish but are down to see something kind of gross and intense. I had a lot of fun in the theater. I would definitely recommend seeing it in theaters if you can. Um, but I think that is I don't know. I hope they keep going. Honestly, I don't think it's something that you could do too much of because you can always shift it, always change it. So if they come out with more, I'll definitely go see them. But for now, thank you all for being here. Please subscribe, like, and follow me on Instagram and Letterboxd. I'm going to be starting a new project on Instagram, hopefully, so stay tuned for that. But otherwise, I'll see you next time.